they're kind of sitting pretty right now.
They are.
They have the 27th pick. They're just going to watch all the other teams make these crazy odd picks. What do you kind of think that they're just sitting back waiting? What do you think they're going to be doing come Thursday?
Yeah, they're in a pretty good situation right now. I think that with this team, this is a team that went 14-2 in 2019, obviously 11-5 in 2020, a bit of a downturn in that record, but they have a competitive roster and they don't necessarily need to force any one selection. I think it's more of let's just sit back, as you mentioned, and wait to see how the board ends up falling to us. And if there's a guy who falls into the anywhere from 17 to 20 range, potentially they could move up and make a trade. And if they feel like they have a couple prospects who they like and they actually make it to 27, they could even trade back. So Eric DeCosta loves moving up and down the draft board, just maneuvering it at will for him, and I think that's what they're going to do for sure.
And like you said, it's the same team from 2019. I mean, it's probably not the exact result everyone thought we were going to have in 2020, but there's not much for them to really change.
Yeah, it's something where you have Lamar Jackson, who is, at this point, the team. He is what makes the gears turn. But they have a bunch of pieces, and this offense, it's a young one. So obviously, the addition of Sammy Watkins does help in a veteran regard. But if a stud's a stud, it doesn't matter what age they are. And for the Ravens, I know wide receiver's been a very big talking point for them over the course of this offseason, missing out on Juju Smith-Schuster, T.Y. Hilton. But in this draft class, there are a couple of options. The Ravens said that they have their eye on players like Rashad Bateman and Terrace Marshall Jr., who are, I think, first-round prospects. I don't even think they're going to make it to Baltimore at 27. So there's a trade-up opportunity. But this is a deep wide receiver class. But you mentioned it, Lindsay. The team itself is pretty similar to 2019. Obviously, a bit of turnover. The loss of Marshall Yanda hurt them in 2020 quite a bit, so they could look to shore up the interior of that line even more, even though they added Kevin Zeitler in free agency. But they have a few holes to fill, but not over a few at that. And I think that they can, again, make sure that the draft board falls in a way that they want, and they can look to make moves in that regard.
Yeah, and like you said, they have the receiving core, but they're just thin. They don't have a big guy. Like, yeah, they have, who is it? Marquise Brown.
Marquise
They
Brown.
don't have that big receiver that's just going to take down any kind of corner coming at them.
Yeah, and that's one of the concerns. I know that Kadarius Toney, the wide receiver from Florida, has been mocked to the Ravens in some situations, and he's an electric playmaker, but he kind of has some of the intangibles that Hollywood Brown does have. And, for Marquise Brown, I think that he is a big piece in this offense. Started off slow in 2020, really came around towards the end of the year and had that big playoff push. They call him Playoff Marquise Brown because he shows up in the playoffs. But with the Ravens, you mentioned it, they have to get that big bodied wide receiver. And Sammy Watkins, who they did sign, has a bit of the ability to play on the outside and in the slot. He has that, I think, versatility, which is really nice. But for example, Terrace Marshall Jr., who is a big body, this class, they're versatile in the fact that they can play on the outside or move inside to the slot. But right now, Marquise Brown, I think, plays his best football in the slot. The team also has Devin Duvernay, who they drafted in the third round in 2020. He's in line for increased snaps, and James Prochet, who had just one reception, the team is really high on as well. All slot options. So if the Ravens add another slot option in the draft, it becomes, all right, where are the snaps coming? Whose snaps are getting cut or decreased? So on the outside, you have Miles Boykin, who has been a bit of a disappointment so far, but still has some time to develop, and I think he's going to bounce back in 2021. But now it's a matter of, do the Ravens go after that big-bodied receiver to help Lamar Jackson and he who can win those one-on-one contested football catches?
Yeah, and you can tell their running game, don't touch it. Right now, the running game, there's nothing wrong with it. How do you think Lamar can just expand even more with that running game and turn it into a more passing game that they kind of need?
Yeah, they definitely need to pass the football a bit better. Their 2020 wasn't like the worst thing I've ever seen, but there definitely is some room for improvement. I know Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, has gotten plenty of flack for it. In terms of Lamar Jackson and the Ravens rushing offense, I think that's a key in getting the pass offense going because the Ravens run the ball so dominantly that teams have to respect that and stack the box. And then now the Ravens have to take that next step of taking advantage of that more consistently. Lamar Jackson loves throwing over the middle of the field. He also throws the ball outside well. well, but he definitely does prefer throwing to targets like Mark Andrews over the middle, getting guys like Marquise Brown open over the middle as well. Adding Sammy Watkins again will help with that, but at the same time, I mean, the rushing offense is so dominant that teams will put 8, 9 guys in the box and then leave guys one-on-one on the outside. And that's where a receiver in the draft like a Rashad Bateman or Terrace Marshall could help. And I don't expect the rushing offense to slow down. I actually probably expect it to improve, which might be a crazy thing to say because it already is so good. But what you have is an improved offensive line already, I think, with the addition of Kevin Zeitler. Bradley Bozeman might be moving over to center from left guard, the position he played at Alabama. But the Ravens could add in the draft there as well. So the offensive line, I think, is key for them, both in the run and the pass game, because Lamar Jackson, however good he is, he can't do anything if he's getting hit 2 seconds into a play. So that's another key thing.
Absolutely. With the offensive line, they've shown their dominance throughout the season. But when it comes to the playoffs, it's not just Lamar, it's the line too. They seem like they're almost getting overwhelmed when it comes to the second part of the season.
Yeah, it's been a pretty big drop off from the line over the last few years in the playoffs, especially when you look at their most recent output against Buffalo. Lamar Jackson really couldn't do anything. The run game couldn't really do anything. I think 4 of the 5 guys on that line had negative grades by a wide margin from PFF, or it might have been another site. But regardless, they did not play well, and actually their play resulted in Lamar Jackson getting injured on a play where Patrick McCarry snaps the football over Lamar Jackson's head. Jackson has to go and get it, and gets hit both up and down all over his body, slams his head on the turf, left has to leave the game with a concussion. So you don't want to put your quarterback in those situations. And for the Ravens, they entered this offseason, they flat out said, yeah, the offensive line is someplace where we are going to look this offseason. And they did that in the playoffs. It's been tough over the last 3 seasons, even going back to the games against the Los Angeles Chargers in the wild card round, or the Tennessee game in the divisional round in the 2019 playoffs. There's just been a big drop off there. And obviously, again, I talked about Marshall Yanda a bit earlier. His presence, he's a future Hall of Famer. I mean, one of the most consistent guards in, I think, NFL history. He's someone who's lost hurt. The Ravens go into the year with Tyree Phillips, a rookie, starting at right guard. Phillips played tackle in college, so it didn't seem like they had a concrete option, but there's no replacing Yanda. Now they have the veteran in Zeitler. And that playoff experience, I think, from the guys on the line as well. I think the Orlando Brown situation is one to monitor, of course, because he is one of the best bright young tackles in the league. But their playoff performances do have to improve in order for the Ravens to advance to where they want to.
We've seen they've spent the money on some cornerbacks, but they love to blitz. So what else do they kind of need to do to kind of pressure the other offenses?
Yeah, the Ravens over these last couple of years, Lindsay, have definitely struggled to get consistent pressure on the quarterback without blitzing. You talked about how good they are at blitzing. They blitz over the last couple of years has been one of the highest rates in the entire league. But when they have to send 4, send 5, and respect some of these high-flying passing offenses, for example, the Kansas City Chiefs, those teams can pick them apart when Baltimore's not getting consistent pressure on the quarterback. And for the Ravens, losing Matthew Judon, Yannick Ngakoue, and Jihad Ward, 3 of their 6 edge rushers in free agency, is a big blow. That's a lot of sack production, a lot of pressure production as well. They do retain Tyus Bowser and Pernell McPhee along with Jalen Ferguson, but looking to the draft, I think edge could be a key need for them, just because they do need to get that consistent pressure. Justin Houston visited with the Ravens a couple weeks ago, and I think that he could be an option post May 3rd when the compensatory pick formula no longer negates picks for unrestricted free agents. But at the end of the day, the pressure that the Ravens hoped they were getting, Calais Campbell missed a couple games last year. They hoped he would be getting that interior pressure. Derek Wolfe is someone who was phenomenal against the run, but only had 1 sack in 2020. So the pass rush is a key need for them because they can do it while they're blitzing, but now it's that taking that next step of, all right, can they do it without blitzing?
So obviously we've talked about the Ravens. They don't have a specific pinpoint, hey, we need a quarterback. Hey, we need a defensive lineman, whatever it may be. What do you think the 27th pick, is it going to be offensive or is it going to be defensive?
It can really go either way. I mean, this team is so unpredictable. Ozzie Newsome, Eric DeCosta, all these decision makers have been so good at just kind of keeping their hands tight to their chest over the last couple of years and not revealing anything. If I had to guess, it's probably going to be one of a wide receiver, an edge player, or an offensive lineman. Those are the 3 key needs that I can kind of take and say, all right, these are the ones that if there's a playmaker available, there's no doubt that they could pick them. But at the same time, if there's a good player like a Christian Barmore from Alabama, the interior defensive lineman, that could be a selection. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the linebacker who can play all over the field, that could be something. Maybe a safety because they do need a true free safety, even though Deshaun Elliott and Chuck Clark are phenomenal players. There are a few minor needs that the team could surprise people with and take in the first round. I don't see a running back being that selection. That would be a pretty big shock to me. Quarterback obviously is not a need on this team at all. But I think it could be one of wide receiver, edge, or interior offensive line. There are plenty of prospects who could be available at that selection. If I had to pinpoint one, I think if Rashad Bateman, the wide receiver from Minnesota, is on the board, that probably will be the selection. I don't think he falls, but that could be a pick. And then one person who feels like a Ravens pick to me, definitely Azeez Ojulari, the edge out of Georgia. Just feels like he's had a bit of a similar pre-draft process to the one Patrick Queen had last season, and it seems like the team also likes him. So those are two players I could pinpoint.
And I will second that. I absolutely agree with you, especially the edge. I think the edge is probably their number one pick. I can't really think of another position that they're going to be hunting for right off the bat.
Yeah, it's definitely one of their big ones, especially losing three solid contributors on defense in the offseason.
Yeah. All right, Kevin, anything else that I'm not asking you that you want to add to?
I think this team is competitive. I think they're ready to go out there and win. They've obviously been disappointed over the past couple of seasons in their roster right now. I think people were a bit disappointed with how slow free agency was. And at the end of the day, I mean, this team has what it takes to go out there and win a Super Bowl. I know there's optimism, there's pessimism, but at the end of the day, I think this team is just all right. And the draft will prove that. I think they have a pretty good class themselves.
Well, perfect. You heard it first. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks so much, Lindsay.